Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm State Senator Melissa Lopez-Franz, and also the Minority Leader in the Minnesota Senate, and I'm joined by most of the members of our caucus here with me today, of the DFL Senate caucus, who all understand that the world has changed in the last week and a half, and we understand the urgency of today. It has changed when a draft of the Supreme Court decision was to strip away a woman's privacy rights by overturning Roe versus Wade was leaked. The world looks different today than it did just a few days ago. That's why we felt the need to communicate to Minnesotans about the urgency of where people in this state and across this country have suddenly found themselves in. And to let Minnesotans know that because of the Supreme Court action, they will, for the first time, lose the rights that were protected by a 50-year precedent of Roe versus Wade. We want to explicitly say to Minnesotans, the majority of whom strongly agree with us and disagree with the coming Supreme Court decision, that we're going to do everything we can to protect the rights of every Minnesotan now as it has today. That was the purpose of our urgency today in our actions when we brought bills to the floor. We are a legislative body, and while we do not control the setting of the agenda in the Minnesota Senate today, the Republican majority has no plans to act on this issue, and they want us to ignore it. Today, every one of them is on record 9 times as supporting and stripping away the rights of women to choose. In fact, not even one of them stood up to say a word when they actually had the chance on the Senate floor. Their silence speaks volumes. But I will say to them, we hear them. We hear our Minnesotans, and most importantly, Minnesotans have now heard them. And we will work hard to ensure that everyone remembers where they stand. The Republican majority has also said they want to support moms and families. We gave them a chance today to show that support, and they rejected every one of our measures. Minnesotans need to know what is coming and how that will impact them. We have limited time left this legislative session to prepare for what's coming, and that's why we're fighting to do so today. And what we will continue to do in the fight in the limited time that we have left is what we did today on the Senate floor with members of my Senate colleagues in the Senate DFL caucus. With that, I will pass it on to Senator Port, followed by Senator Kunish, and then Senator Murphy. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Senator Lindsey Port, and thank you for joining us today. It was an important day in the Minnesota Senate where we brought forth 9 bills with urgency. And I want to say that word again, urgency, because what is facing Minnesotans is urgent. There is a crisis of maternal mortality. There is a crisis of families needing support. There is a crisis that we are about to see with the overturning of Roe versus Wade of people from the states surrounding us needing to access care in Minnesota. Today we brought forth a package of bills that really look at this from the very beginning all the way through the reproductive process, all the way through the various ways that our caucus has worked for years to put together bills that protect a woman's right to choose, that take care of pregnant women and their families, and that lift up and support families across the state. Every single one of those bills today was met with silence. Just like they have on climate change, the Republicans today denied the urgency of these bills in front of us and the urgency that's facing Minnesotans, and we deserve better.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Mary Conway of District 39. I have to say that the performance or the lack of performance by our GOP members was extremely disturbing today. Just as they have said that education matters and brings forward a single bill to address our educational needs, our GOP members refuse to participate in the action that is going to bring resources, valuable resources to our families. We're talking about resources that would reach from the very moment of conception through the ages of all children and women. And unfortunately, they refuse to participate. We did not have one GOP member engage, ask questions, debate the issues that we brought forward. It was as if we were not even there. In fact, by the end of the session, I would say maybe a handful of members were still there in spite of the fact that these are absolutely urgent issues. Issues that really address the disparity in the women who are our mothers and our grandmothers, our sisters and ourselves, issues that provide resources to those families as soon as a child is born, resources that will affect our families for years and generations to come. And the reason we had to do this is because our bills were not being heard this session. I had a bill, I had 5 requests in for a hearing, and I never received a hearing on it. This is what we had to put up with this entire session, lack of inclusion and participation, and it was for that reason that we brought this slate of bills forward today for the state of Minnesota, for our families, and again, we had no cooperation by our GOP members. And that is what we have had to deal with this entire session. Things need to change here in our state Senate, and I hope that our Senate GOP members are listening and realize that they did a terrible disservice to our state today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Erin Murphy, Senator from District 64 in St. Paul. Since 2014, I have been working on legislation to create contraception access and affordability. Contraception is a tool, a medication that people use to prevent unwanted pregnancies, unintended pregnancies. It is also a medication used to treat many conditions. Making it affordable and reliable and dispensed for 12 months means that people will have access to it. And when we think about the protracted debate that we are having in this country around the issue of abortion, preventing unintended pregnancies has got to be the common ground, the middle ground, and I would anticipate bipartisan support for such a measure. But instead, every time I have moved this proposal along with Senator Pappas and my colleagues, both in the House and in the Senate, the Republican majorities have blocked it. They have blocked a vote or they have voted no. It is a bipartisan supported proposal. People across the country, women across the country use contraception in a high number. It is important that we codify it here in the state of Minnesota. Today's debate was about a contrast, and you saw a Republican majority sitting quietly or vacating the chamber rather than engaging in this important debate about our health care, about our families, and about our economic security. And make no mistake, the debate that we are having in this country now is not just about abortion. It is about our autonomy. It is about our standing and our equality and our freedom in this country. And today, the Senate Republicans sat quietly by as we fought for people's equality, their autonomy, their ability to choose when to start a family, when to grow their family. And today, we are having a debate about our ability to navigate in this country freely and to build economic wealth. All of those things are under attack by the decision coming from the Supreme Court, and today the Republicans chose to stand against us. That's the contrast, and it's important for Minnesotans to know. Thank you.
Back to the time for some questions.
I have a question, but you don't have to look at me when you answer because it makes those guys mad. I know maybe it sounds crass to talk about election politics, but that's kind of where this goes right now. If you don't hold the governorship or one of the houses, all sorts of things can change in this state, perhaps. So can you talk about where you think the election landscape is and whether there was an indication of concern on the part of Republicans that on a couple of those issues you had suburban Republicans voting yes?
So thank you for the question, and I wish this wasn't an election issue, but it became one as soon as that leak happened. We've had 50 years of president telling women that they have the right to their own privacy to make their own decisions, and now a Supreme Court, not even the populace, not even the voters, a certain number of justices made this decision for all of us. And that's not just women, that's people around the country that are deciding individual private matters of their reproductive rights and their privacy matters in their home and their bedrooms. And it just became a big issue for every single Minnesotan, every single American. So I would like to say that we're moving forward in policy and protecting human rights and privacy rights, but we're moving backwards 50 years by just literally making this decision official. And the draft is just a scapegoat. People are talking about consensus of trying to help and protect women and families, but we saw today that even bills that would provide support for families to take care of kids were rejected by this Republican majority in the Senate. So I think this is an election issue, and I wish people understood the gravity of the moment, and I think that is why we heard silence, because they understand it too.
I will just add one thing. While we heard silence in the chamber, we're not hearing silence from Minnesotans on this issue. They are clear about the fight in front of us. We do need to make sure we win the governor's race, and we need to win one and both chambers in the legislature. We know when we don't have those chambers that the next move could be a constitutional amendment. We saw that happen in 2012. We can't take that risk and let that happen again. And so to Minnesotans, yes, this is an issue for the legislature. We need to codify the PRO Act that Jen McEwen brought up today. We need to codify access to contraception, but we also have to make sure that we have the Minnesotans elected who are going to do this work for the people of Minnesota.
Will what's at stake change anybody's minds about their retirements?
I'm not sure who that was targeted to, but I will tell you this. When I heard my colleague Jen McEwen, Senator McEwen, talk about the PRO Act, which I'm a co-author of with her, to codify Roe versus Wade, you bet that I will be working my tail off to make sure that that happens in the next election and the next legislature, and hopefully we'll be in the majority, because that's the only way that that's going to happen.
But I guess what I was hoping you would talk to me about, given that you're a suburban legislator, and that's where the battleground could well be, was how, and we've seen polling, but how you think it plays in those battleground districts.
I think, thank you for the question, how does this play out in suburban districts? I think women have fought really hard for a long time for the rights that they have, and they don't take those for granted. And I think women in districts like mine that are very much in tune to what's happening and very much understand what's at stake for their lives, for their careers, for their families, they will show up and they will organize. And I think you'll see that make a really big change in the midterm elections. Normally in a midterm election is where we call, we think we're going to lose, but I think in this case, it's completely changed the landscape of this next election. And it's not just here in Minnesota, it's across the country. I think also it's important to know that we have rights and protections right now here in Minnesota, even if Roe versus Wade gets overturned, by our own constitutional rights in terms of a lawsuit that was in a verdict in Gomez, but that can also go away by legislation. So we have a lot at stake. There's also trigger bans. There's states around in the Midwest, 2 of them right in our border, North and South Dakota, that as soon as Roe versus Wade happens and becomes the reality, those 2 states will ban abortion. And those people who need abortions will come to Minnesota for that care. And that will put a stress in our own healthcare system. And we have to realize that that's going to affect all of us, not just women. It's going to affect families across the state.
On some broader things here. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a point that there is a whole generation that has never lived without the opportunity to choose their reproductive choices, such as abortion, and their access to contraceptions. When you think of 50 years ago, abortion became legal. And so those folks that are 50 years or younger have always had access to choice. And when they realize the significance of losing that incredible personal choice, I'm hoping that they will come out in droves and make sure that this next election ensures that they will have that right for not only their own choice, but for the next generations. This is an incredibly significant moment. We have not had civil rights rolled back like this for decades and decades and decades. And I just hope that there are men and women out there that are going to wake up to this and realize that this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of those civil rights being rolled back out, and they need to stand up and make sure that they are supporting and they are electing officials and decision makers that are going to ensure their civil rights going forward for a good long time, because it will not be pretty if we do not have a majority that is going to ensure that those rights continue. Thank you.
Then on something broader here, we've got just a little over a week left in the session here. Some of you are either on conference committees or you're hearing about what's going on in them. Do you have any hope for compromises on any of the big issues here still left unresolved? Taxes, public safety, any of that?
Thank you for the question. Compromise, we have a lot of time in legislative talk, right? We have over a week, and just before coming here, I was having a meeting with my colleague, Senator Bach, who's the chair of the bonding committee. So we're moving, we're talking with the House, and we're making some progress. You know, I've been here only 10 years, but I've seen bills come to the floor minutes before adjournment. So we have a lot of time left, and I hope it doesn't come to the bitter end. But I think people expect a bonding bill from us, and I hope we do more work on public safety, and there's some traction on mental health support. So I do see some hope, and I don't know if any other colleague wants to chime in. And obviously taxes. Senator Rest has been working really hard on that.
I just have one other question, back to the topic at hand. I'm seeing various articles now about the impacts to the economy as, you know, if women's reproductive rights are rolled back. And does anyone want to comment on, you know, Janet Yellen testified about that before Congress just the other day. So does anybody want to comment on what it means for the economy?
Sure. Yeah, it's a dramatic issue for the economy. When women are not able to choose when and whether to start their families on their own, it sets them back years and sometimes decades in earning power. It makes them less able to afford to buy homes. It makes them less stable in their own family growth economically, and it removes people from the workforce. It's a huge economic issue. And looking at it through that lens is a really important piece of this conversation, because it will have reverberating impacts, not just through our families, not just through women, through who goes to college, through who is able to get higher education, through the workforce. It is going to have reverberating impacts that we really cannot ignore.
I'll just add that having a child is expensive too. The cost of actually delivering of a child, if anyone who's been through that experience in the last decade, that's not going down, it's only going up. And the childcare costs as well for families. So if we're gonna support families, we really need to know the consequences of this action. It's gonna really exponentially aggravate other areas, and when people and families can't have the opportunity to make those choices. Why do we need government to tell them how many kids and when to have them? So I think it's a very important subject matter that we all have to take into account the decisions and the unintended consequences of a simple ban on abortion. I'm just getting, the National Bureau of Economic Research found that women who were denied an abortion experienced a large increase in financial distress that is sustained for several years, including a substantial increase in the rate of evictions, bankruptcies, and other negative financial events. Thank you, fact finders.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job, you guys. Good job.